Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by Fireheart Entertainment and viewers like you. Thank you.
A single positive encounter can potentially change your life, especially if it provides significant motivation or a new perspective. Tonight, our guest shares how he went from Harlem hoodlum to Hollywood heavyweight. I'm so happy you're joining us.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you. And now your host, Dr. Angela Williamson.
Hank Garrett is our guest. Hank, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book, and we will get to your book. But before we do,
Yes.
we want to reacquaint our audience with you, because our audience they've been walking the journey with you because we've seen you. We feel like we already know you. But what was interesting about this book is that I got to know you better. And before we start, I want you just to paint for our audience 111th Street in New York, Harlem, New York. I mean, what would we experience if we were there while Hank was there?
A lot was going on, my God. We played stickball in the street. That was our form of baseball. Used the red ball, it was called a Spalding. We would chip in to buy a ball that cost, I think, 30 or 40 cents.
Wow.
We lived on the street. We truly did. Somebody would steal a couple of potatoes. Mm-hmm. We'd throw it into a trash can, a Giant's trash can that belonged to the city. We put that on fire, and that's what we cooked our food in.
So when you said that you lived on the street from the morning until night, you were on the street and cooking lunch, eating dinner?
My mother and father were fruit and vegetable peddlers. They had a push cart, and they rolled around anywhere from 111th to 116th Street, stopping to sell fruits and vegetables. And whatever they earned is what we lived on.
Okay.
Quite often, we missed meals. There were times that we ate some of the rotted fruit, cut away the bad parts. I never knew any other life than that. We were very poor. Then they got into an open air market, and they rented a stand, and my mother was 4'10" and weighed 220.
Wow.
So I always joked, I said, my mom, boy, thank God she had the height to carry that weight.
God bless her soul.
So, and the neighborhood used to, when I was very young, was primarily a Jewish neighborhood.
Oh, really?
Then a lot of the Puerto Rican families moved in from Puerto Rico. And at one point, I was raised by a Puerto Rican family. They saw me on the street, and it's called a Tirado, their last name, Tirado. And they took me in off the street. I was standing in the street freezing, and the woman said to me in Spanish, ¿Dónde está tu mamá, tu papá? Where's your mother and father? And I said, I didn't know. And she found my mom at the market, and she said, is it okay if I take him home, get him off the street. It's winter, it's freezing. So La Señora Tirado raised me with her family. And I remember one night, I actually had dinner with my mother and father, my real mother and father. They were from Russia, they were Russian immigrants. And I said to my mother, Mami, yo tengo mucho hambre, yo quiero algo a comer, which means I'm very hungry and want something to eat. And my mother looked at my father and said, he's speaking in tongues. They didn't understand a word I said.
That is the best part in that book, too, was just the way that you were able to use humor to tell the story that's just heart-wrenching, but the joys that you found in that, courting with his family.
Yes.
So at this point, then, you're Hank, and now you're part of a Puerto Rican family.
Right.
Right? And so at that point, when the neighborhood started to change, you just all still worked together and played together, right?
Oh, absolutely. I spoke Spanish. My street name, Hank is, the name is Henry.
Henry.
And in Spanish it's Enrique. And then they called me by a nickname, Quique.
Oh my goodness.
So I became Quique Greenberg. That was the last name. Say Quique Greenberg.
Where did that come from? What I really admire about you, and I admire this about a lot of comedians, is how you hone your craft. And you really honed your craft by telling these stories, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Why is that important?
They didn't believe me when I told them the truth about the neighborhood. And so I had to embellish.
Okay.
Make it interesting.
Yes.
Oh, God. There was a customer of my mom's, and he was the mayor of Harlem. My mother was crying to him. I was always in trouble, which was true. I was taken into the police station. A bunch of us, we were watching the older guys shooting dice in the schoolyard. And there was a raid. The cops came in from all over, boom, and they arrested all of us, including the kids. The kids were always around the dice game because the winners would always hand us $1 or $2. Well, here we are in jail. I was 12 or 13 years old. And, oh no, I wasn't even that old. And I'm in the joint with all these bad guys.
Wow.
We finally got out. My father got me out when he heard. He probably didn't realize I was gone for 2 or 3 days. And he came and got me. And there was a gentleman who was a customer of my mother's. And my mother was crying to him that I was always in trouble. And he came to talk to me. And he said, do you know about the Apollo Theater? And I said, no. He said, 125th Street. I said, oh, yeah, I've seen it. He said, I want you to meet somebody. Well, I met a couple of gentlemen, and one of them introduced me to a guy named Sammy Davis Jr.
Wow.
And I had seen the name at the Apollo Theater.
Yes.
So he said, call me my man. Listen, my man, if you keep going the way you're going, you're going to go to prison or you're going to die. I said, that's it? He said, the way you're going, yeah. Took me to the Apollo Theater. And I sat there and watched Sammy Davis Jr. He was on for 45 minutes or longer, probably an hour and a half, nonstop, singing, dancing. And I just sat there and watched this incredible guy. And he said, I'm from Harlem. His grandmother lived in Harlem. His grandmother was Puerto Rican. And the next thing I know, I had a job talking about my life on the street in my act. And people were laughing. And they said, Sammy Davis Jr. said, I think we found an out for you.
Because he said you'll either be what if you don't stop what you're doing?
Oh, you either go to prison or die.
Exactly.
I said, that's it? He said, the way you're going, yeah. I was 12 years old, had a pistol in my pocket. And as Sam was talking to me, the pistol kept getting heavier and heavier. I thought it was going to rip through my pocket. And I said, I got to get rid of this thing. And Sam said, you don't need it ever again. Got me a job appearing at the Apollo Theater.
Because at the Apollo Theater, you actually hold something that's legendary. Because what happened at the Apollo Theater when you started working there?
Oh my God. First of all, no one from the streets had ever worked the Apollo Theater. And you go, and I spoke Spanish, Puerto Rican, and in my act, I would mention words in Spanish and Puerto Rican. And people flocked to the Apollo to see a guy from 111th Street.
Yes.
And it said, now I walk out on stage and they're looking at me and they said, are you Puerto Rican? And I said, en mi corazón, in my heart.
You are. And I can't believe it. Our first segment is almost done, but that was a wonderful picture of 111th Street.
Oh.
And also, too, to show us how one significant encounter can change your life.
Absolutely.
So hold on. When we come back, we are going to talk more about your book, but we're going to pay tribute to someone special.
Oh, please.
Okay, great. Come back to hear more from Hank.
I'm Belinda, and this is Willard, and we were adopted in 2021. When we first met Todd, he was singing a song, and I was like, wow, look at this kid with the biggest smile, and he has a big heart to match.
The energy you give Todd, you get it back from Todd.
Yeah.
Todd's a joy.
Yes, he
Todd's
is.
really is a great joy.
I love him. You and you.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Welcome back. Hank. Thank you. Oh, that was fantastic. In the first segment, you painted us a picture, but what was really important is that you talked about how one significant encounter can really change your life.
Oh, absolutely.
But you were really humble. You did mention a little bit that you actually appeared at the Apollo. But what I think is phenomenal is that you were a trailblazer because you were the first white comedian
Yes.
to actually appear at the Apollo.
Right.
Which is phenomenal. So we have to say that before we move on.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I mean, this book is absolutely fascinating, and at the end of our talk today, we will let our guests know how they can get this book.
Oh, marvelous. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
definitely so. But before we move on and talk more about this book, we want to spend some time, and actually talk about this. You had a show that was very successful on a few seasons on ABC, I believe, at Paris.
Oh, God, yes.
Yes, and you starred with someone that is really beloved, and we lost him last year. So let's talk a little bit and pay honor to this person. So tell us about your pilot with James Earl Jones.
Oh, he was an incredibly amazing guy. A voice that never, ever quit. That booming voice of his. In fact, we had the series together. We had a ball. Oh, God, we never stopped laughing. And I had the good fortune of meeting his dad.
Really?
He was an actor.
Okay, you have to tell us a little bit about Dad, because that wasn't in the book, and this is great to know. I didn't know his father was an actor.
Yes. He had done some minor roles and stuff. And that's how James got involved in being an actor, because of his dad. And I had the good fortune of meeting his father. James and I did some stuff. In fact, oh my God. He came to my house one night. Well, my kids, I had 2 boys. My oldest son is in his room. In comes James to talk to my son. Now, he saw my son had a helmet. And he put the helmet on, and he did the voice of Darth Vader, which was the nemesis on our show. And he did the voice, and my son yelled, "Oh my God, it's Darth Vader!" And he could not sleep. Next day he goes to school, and I get a call from his teacher. And she said, "Mr. Garrett, your son, Brandon, has got a very vivid imagination. He's going around telling the other children Darth Vader was in his bedroom last night." And I said, "Well, he was." And I heard, click.
Like
She
father,
hung
like
up.
son. She didn't believe any of you.
No, she said, "That's it. The kid's nuts because of his nutty father." Darth Vader was in your room last night. Yeah, of course.
But he had such a great sense of humor, and I got that from reading your book, because when we see Darth Vader, when we see James Earl Jones, we
Yes.
think of that persona, but that's not who he was, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Fun-loving. They had to ask us, stop joking around to play the next scene. We had the series. And they said, "It's not a comedy series, guys. Wipe the smile off your face, Hank."
Well, it was so interesting to find out you hear things when you're watching people on screen. And we've always heard he was a nice person. But to read it in your book and some of the things to make sure that you had just this great relationship, I mean, how did you both feel? Because you had a successful show, but it only lasted 2 seasons.
Yes.
It should have lasted longer?
We had no explanation. The numbers were strong, but one of the sponsors didn't like it. Pulled out a good portion of the backing, and we had to say goodbye.
Is that difficult? Because you've been on some top-rated series where you become a family. I mean, now let's talk about Car 54, where are you?
Oh,
Wow, I mean, you create, wherever you've been, you've created this family. So is it difficult?
no, I created a family because I didn't have one.
Let's talk about it.
As I mentioned, I lived on the street. I slept under stairwells. My mother and father didn't trust me to be home alone. So they thought if I was on the street with some of the other kids, it would be okay. But a lot of the other kids had homes to go to. I didn't. My mother and father were out trying to make a couple of bucks. So they would be gone all day long. And there were times that they didn't get home till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm living on the street. Did they forget that I was out there? I remember we would start fires in big trash cans to keep warm. And I learned for some of the other homeless, take newspaper, stick it under your shirt, under your jacket to keep warm. And a very dear friend of mine, another kid named George Washington Jr., we were approximately the same age. And his father was a superintendent of a building. It's the janitor. Mm-hmm. And he was working all the time. So George and I were on the street. And what we would do, there was 2 theaters in the neighborhood. The Cosmo Theater on 116th Street, the Foxstar Theater on 105th in Lexington. We would chip in whatever pennies we had. And one of us would buy a ticket and then go upstairs, open the door, and a bunch of us ran in. It afforded us warmth. There were 2 movies and a place to be. But we never sat together, because when the management came through and saw the entire balcony full of kids, he only sold 2 tickets that afternoon.
He did the math.
Yes. He said, now wait.
Oh my goodness. You know, there's just so much in this book, but before we end our talk today, I think our audience, because a lot of people will remember you from your pro wrestling days. And
oh my.
We can't finish our conversation without talking about that.
Okay.
Because I thought was really interesting was this was before you were an actor. This is really what you did first, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that before we end our conversation.
Okay.
You someone discovered you while you were working out doing martial arts, right? Am I remembering the story correctly?
Yes.
So tell us what happens.
I became a very close friend of a guy named Benny the Jet Arquidis. He was a champ kickboxer. His mom was a pro wrestler. And that's how I got to meet him. I became a wrestler. I got off the street and I was very strong, pumping iron. A bunch of kids, we chipped in and we bought a barbell set. And we kept it up on the roof, and we worked out on the roof. I was getting bigger, stronger, and someone said, man, do you know that? And he mentioned one of the names, and honestly, I don't recall, who had been a wrestler. I was talking to the gentleman, and he introduced me to a manager, a wrestling manager. And he said, well, you want to be a wrestler? You sure? I said, can I make any money on it? And he said, yeah, if you're good. I was fighting at Madison Square Garden. And there I met a guy named Gene LaBelle. Gene LaBelle became the champ of pro wrestling in judo and jiu-jitsu. Well, I started training with Gene LaBelle. I don't know why, but I was fascinated with the stuff he could do. Gene got me involved in pro wrestling. Wow. He took me to a manager and said, this kid is strong. I've been working out with him. And next thing I know, here I am, Hank Daniels, the Minnesota farm boy. Never been to Minnesota, never saw a farm. I said, what do I do? He said, say words like gosh and golly. I said, okay.
And then that's what you were known as,
Yeah.
and you have actually been inducted into the Wrestling
Hall of Fame.
Okay. So our audience, I just want to let you know, these are just a few of the stories that we talked about. There's so much here. This book is available on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Amazon. Hank, thank you so much for spending
Thank
time
you.
with me. It was my pleasure. But most importantly, thank you for writing this book with your wife, Dawn Marie, to leave this legacy.
She wrote the book.
She wrote, see?
All I did was tell her about some of the stories of my life. She made those stories come to life.
Dawn Marie, thank you so much. She's actually offset. She can hear me right now. But thank you so much for spending time with me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been an honor. And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Join us on social media to continue this conversation. Good night and stay well.